Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is I, yes. It's me. Brennon. Brennon. Here again with another episode. Episode 7 of the Too Deep Coverage podcast. Did you miss me? Did you? Probably not, but that's okay. I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. That's right. I'm here to make myself happy. I'm here to enjoy what I do. I'm here to put out what I feel is valuable. And if you like it, cool. Find some value in it, cool. If not, cool. I have to remind myself of that. I am in the Julia Davis, branch of the St. Louis Public Library. Try to get into the bar branch, but so let me tell you what happened, right? So, you know what I'm saying? I'm back in school. That's number one. And once the season started in September, I fell off, right? School started, and the job that I was doing, little contract job where I drove nurses from residence to residence, in-home health care, checkups, and then I would pretty much have a lot of chill time in between. I felt like, okay, this is a cool job to where I can do my schoolwork in between appointments. I can do my homework for my classes, and I would have the flexibility, right, to still be able to put out content. And it didn't go that way. You know what I mean? Just not really knowing how to manage the time and adjust to those two major life-altering circumstances and changes. Going back to school, starting a new job, them two things that you can't necessarily, well, me personally, I'm a rhythm, structure, person. So having to find that rhythm and find that structure with those two new time-consuming and time-altering responsibilities, I didn't do well with that. So needless to say, that was August that I was working that job. I had started in July. The contract is already up on that job. Shout out to my shiny forehead. I'll touch on that in a second. But the company who hosted the contract for the nurses, for whatever reason, they couldn't renew the contract. So I ended up being a free agent again, and I'm back in these Uber streets again. And I have a lot more flexibility and freedom again to kind of move around Uber as I get back into this, get back into the gym, get back into my rhythm that I'm used to, so I can put out more of this content more consistently and take care of other responsibilities, work, classwork, etc. So that's that, right? So that's why I missed pretty much the first month of the regular season. What I am going to do is go back at some point and review the tape. I'm not necessarily going to make content about it, but I'll be able to speak to it of the first 3-4 weeks of the season. And if I need to cover that content or incorporate it into the new content that I create as the season goes on, then I'll have that information to pull from. I'll just be able to review that film. Shout out to NFL Plus. Having all the condensed replays has made it very convenient. Hopefully I'll be able to incorporate some of that film into the content in future episodes. So I wanted to record yesterday. Today is Saturday. I almost said June. Jesus, I done lost track of time. Saturday, October 5th, 2024. I wanted to record yesterday. I was set up, and then I was just like, you know what? I could watch a couple more games with the condensed replay so I can have a little bit more insight and speak to it a little bit more comfortably of what I see on the film and what that tells me about what teams are doing, what players are doing, what coaches are doing, what GMs are doing, and owners are doing, as opposed to just going off of what ESPN says or what this analyst says or what this show says. I wanted to be able to have my own perspective that I provide to you, which is why I call the show Too Deep Coverage, because it's I explained that in the first episode. So if you didn't see the first episode, go back, watch it, catch up. Feel free to like it, comment on the episodes as you see fit. And if you really enjoy and really feel informed by what you're listening to, you can subscribe to. Subscribe and share it with other people so that you can bless them with this content that I'm putting out. All right? But yeah, I opted to table it yesterday, so I'm in here on a Saturday. I got done moving some items from my old property. Probably speak on that another day. That I was holding for, or that a tenant of the property was holding for my wife. So I was doing some moving in the sun. No AC in the whip right now. That's a whole nother story. The car thing, the accident thing, it's giving craziness, right? I don't know what's going on. Just other people's cars are attracted to my car for some reason. I had a little nudge last week that I'm trying to get resolved with insurance, and the air had went out. The fan had went out on my AC and my heat. So trying to get that fixed too next week. $300. All right. So like I said, your boy got a lot going on. I'm just happy to be here in the library. Happy to be here in the studio recording this content. Got some good camera angles. I'm looking pretty decent, once I throw the hat on. Shout out to the Battlehawks. Even though they went out of the playoffs last season in an unfortunate way, they still had a good year. Still an impressive year. Still got to the playoffs. Still performed well. Y'all thought I was going to show you my hair. It's not looking good right now. Real grizzly. October, like I said earlier, is when I wanted to get back into the gym. Generally, as the winter comes, I let everything grow out, go crazy. I stop caring about being pretty. Pretty time is the summertime. You want to be pretty in the summer. You know what I'm saying? You want to have a handsome swag and swagitude. You want to have that in the summer. When it comes to fall, winter, it's time to get swole, time to get big. I just don't like how my shirts is fitting. You know what I'm saying? It's just too much of, you know what I'm saying? So I stopped worrying about all that. And also, as I'm divulging everything about my personal life, my cousin, who was my barber, ended up having some kind of freak accident. He was doing some kind of project, working on a house or something. I don't know what he was doing. I didn't get the details, but he ended up falling. I think he was on Instagram Live or Facebook Live when this happened, or maybe it was right after. He ended up falling. He fell straight down, so like on his feet, but he had the wrong shoes on. Broke his foot. I think he broke his ankle, shattered his kneecap, and then did something. He had to have a whole bunch of surgeries. Let's put it like that. He broke a lot of stuff in his leg. So he's out 3 to 6 months, not weeks. So I don't even have that to tap into if I wanted it. But I don't. I'm good. Don't tell him I said this. But it's kind of good timing. You know what I mean? Like, this could have happened in May, June, and it would have been no summer swagitude. Like, it would have been no handsome, faded, tapered Brennon in the summer if it had happened in May, June. I'm grateful it happened in October, September, selfishly. But I hope he does well. I hope he gets healed soon. Cuz, I love you. I appreciate you. Always been supportive of me and everything I'm doing. So get well soon. Let's get into it. The reason I am taking my time, getting real comfortable on this intro, being real personal, 10 minutes in, is because I'm still taking my shots, right? I'm still getting my shots up. I'm still getting my reps. I'm still getting used to this process of creating content, how to structure it, what rhythm to get into, how to condense it to make it palatable. Am I going to do clips? Probably, hopefully. How to get it down to ideally an hour. Maybe it's supposed to be an hour and a half. Maybe it's supposed to be 2 hours, and then I just clip it up. I'm figuring it out. Shout out to the late great, I'm not going to say his name, rest in peace, but he said you got to build the plane while you fly it. And that's what I'm doing. I had to remind myself of that throughout this whole week and the past couple of days. It's kind of what I'm speaking to. So I'm going to get to as many games as I can. All right? There were 16 games, which usually is the case the first month of the season in the NFL. 32 teams, all active, no bye weeks. So there's 16 games between those 32 teams. Probably going to be difficult for me to cover 16 games in an hour with any level of depth or detail. So we figuring it out. With that being said, I'm going to hop into it. These are all the games that I watched and made notes on. I'm going to try to get to the last few games of the week, which I also watched, but I didn't take the notes because, I'm still figuring out this template. Tomorrow into week 5 and the recap on week 5 is going to be better. All right? Giants-Cowboys. This was the Thursday night game in New York. A miserable game. Miserable weather. And also, as I mentioned, I'm in a library. I got people making Schoolhouse Rock beats right behind me. So, maybe you hear the new single before it comes out. This is the authentic leak. I don't know what the tag is, Don DeMarco, or I don't know. I can't think of listen to this track. I know that's probably a little dated. But it's going to be music in the background. Hopefully you can still hear me well because my mouth is right here on this atrocious smelling microphone delivering you this content. The game started with a deep shot from Daniel Jones to Malik Neighbors on the first drive, led to the first field goal for Greg Joseph of 5. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. I feel like I'm loud. I am. Turn it down just a little bit. I apologize. And y'all can feel free to critique me on the levels and the sound and the quality and all that. I welcome all critiques. As long as it's respectful, I receive it. I want to get better. So, fair enough. Greg Joseph, 5 field goals in the game. That was his first one on that drive. Malik Neighbors been playing really well as in his rookie season. He ended up getting a concussion on the second to last drive of the game. But prior to that, first 4 weeks, historic pace. I honestly didn't see that coming. I knew he was going to be a really good rookie. I didn't think he was going to be in the top 3 of this class. I just didn't see that. And granted, I didn't study much of his tape. I watched a lot of what was publicized in the draft lead up in the process, but I didn't go watch his college film myself. I saw a lot of explosive plays. I didn't see a lot of technical route running, in and out separation. I just saw pure explosion, big speed. But that man is really savvy route running, getting in and out, working the middle of the field, intermediate routes, contested catches, which I also didn't see much of either. I saw him just blazing past guys. He's a complete receiver, very capable of being the number 1 on this franchise, giving Daniel Jones life and hope after we've been on his head for the past 2-3 seasons for his underperformance and just his face. He has a very, I'm trying to get better. We're not talking about folks. But it's a thing to say the Daniel Jones face, right? Quote unquote Daniel Jones face. So I still try to rock with him. I always like the underdog. I like the guy that kind of gets punched down on. I want them to do better. I want them to improve as long as they're not, disrespectful or say anything crazy. And he's always been, mild-mannered, kept to himself. Very similarly, I rocked with Sam Bradford, when that team in L.A. got him when they were in St. Louis. Very good quarterback, and I'll touch on that a little bit later when we talk about the Vikings. He didn't get the right situation and the right opportunity to really display why he was the number 1 overall pick. But we'll touch on that later. The next drive for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott responded with a commanding 75-yard drive, hit 7 receivers on the drive, 7 different receivers, and he capped it off with a dump pass to Rico Dowdle for the opening touchdown of the game. Daniel Jones took more shots, just showed more of an increased willingness to take shots down the field. He hit Darius Slayton, who's going to come up big in this coming week with Malik Neighbors out. He's going to have to come up big, I should say. Hit Slayton for 28 yards to get Greg Joseph into field goal range for another one early in the second, his second field goal. Then Dak came back down, responded to that 3 points with another 6 points, hitting CeeDee Lamb for a 55-yard catch and run. Broke the game open. Biggest play of the game, probably the only notable big play of the game outside of some big Neighbors catches, but nothing like getting to the finish line. Both defenses pretty much hunkered down in the second half, as I said. Giants had more success moving the ball, which kind of struck me. But they couldn't get into the end zone. That was the only thing. Cowboys got into the end zone twice. Giants couldn't get in the end zone none. To be able to get Greg Joseph 5 field goals, to get him in field goal range 5 times, it shows that the Giants were doing pretty well moving the ball, particularly Daniel Jones, who I just mentioned. The Giants had no semblance of a running game. None. They had Devin Singletary, who ran well his one opportunity in one season in Houston, and all of the years he was in Buffalo, he was actually a very efficient runner. They just didn't give him the ball a lot. So when he gets to the Giants, I'm like, okay, he's not Saquon, but if he can be him, that gives Daniel Jones an opportunity to be successful. And he's not been him. I don't blame him. When you see somebody that talented perform well on the NFL level, as I've gotten older, I've learned like those players don't just fall off. Something's happened in their new situation, new coaching staff, new scheme, to where the opportunities are not there for them to do what they do best. I think it's because it's an issue that the Giants have always had. They don't have a great offensive line. And that's shown, too, with how many times Daniel Jones got pressured, even though the Giants have given up, they're in, top 10 in sacks given up, on the good side of giving up sacks, like top 10 least amount of, or bottom 10 of sacks allowed. Put it that way. Bottom 10 of sacks allowed. They're in the positive, which was, I wasn't expecting that. But nevertheless, running the ball, they just are not, they're not creating those gaps. They're not getting to the second level. They're not opening even a little crease for Singletary to get through. He's not the biggest guy. He's very shifty, and he knows how to read the hole. It just didn't seem like he was getting opportunities. That's from what I saw on the film. Like I said, Jones played pretty well. He was very efficient. I think he was 29 of 40, 75, almost 75% completion percentage. I mean, what else can you ask for from your quarterback? No touchdowns, but 281 yards. I think he had one pick, but that was on the last drive of the game when he's pressing and he's trying to, it's 2015. It's the final score. He's trying to get that last touchdown to put them up. So I don't really count that interception towards his grade for that game. He had a really good game. He had a game that was reminiscent of why they decided to pay him what they paid him. Not saying he was worth what they paid him, but it made sense that the play that he made, or the play that he had Thursday night, made sense as to why they wanted to pay him. It's unfortunate that it cost them Saquon, but that front office, if you watch the Hard Knocks, I've only seen clips. They looked highly incompetent. So it's probably not going to get much better. Unfortunately, they're probably still going to try to shop out or move away from Daniel Jones once his contract ends, unless they, buy into the Cowboys model and just reward regular season performances. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen over there in New York. As far as the Cowboys go, Micah Parsons ended up getting injured. High ankle sprain, wrecked my main fantasy league, where I had 3 high-level defensive linemen. All of them got hurt or underperformed. Max Crosby got hurt. Micah Parsons got hurt. T.J. Watt just has not been doing T.J. Watt things. So I thought I was going to build my roster around that. But Parsons has been ineffective all season. I don't know what's going on there. I haven't watched all of their film for the first couple weeks of the year, but I don't know if it's the schemes from the offenses that are doubling, tripling, chipping. But I do know from what I saw last week, I forget who they played, but they were running the ball right at him. And that can definitely neutralize a smaller pass rusher, taking their legs, sapping their energy, to where when it gets late in the game and you need that crunch play or it's a close game, they don't have much left to get that big play. Because, usually pass rusher, you just need them to get that one sack. It's a couple pressures, but get the one sack. He's not getting no pressures, no sacks. And now high ankle, which is tricky. For somebody his size who plays off of speed instead of power, you need that ankle to be healthy so you can push off. I don't know. They still got the win. So, and they pretty much said that in post game. It's like, oh, well, we got the win. We got the win. Well, it was an ugly game. Well, we won. Okay. So y'all know what's coming down the road when y'all play better teams. But Not Dexter. DeMarcus Lawrence also ended up hurting his foot. He exited the game. So their two biggest pass rushers are out. I don't know if they're both out for this week. I know Parsons is, but I haven't checked up on DeMarcus Lawrence. Brandon Cooks, I don't want to say he's cooked because that's an easy joke to punch down on, but he just hasn't been producing enough for that number 2 role. His streak of consecutive 1,000-yard seasons was broken last season for all the various teams he's played for. I know he's played for the Patriots, he's played for the Saints, he's played for the Rams, but he didn't get that 1,000-yard season last year with his only competition being CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson. Very easily should have had 1,000, but I think he still had like 8, something like that. But he just hasn't been very threatening for the Cowboys offense. They don't have that second guy on the outside that can win on his own, take some pressure off of CD, make life easier for Dak, like help lighten the box for these running backs that you have that aren't producing well. Zeke was another fantasy casualty of mine. I drafted him pretty high in a couple leagues. I should have known better, but I was hoping. Shout out to St. Louis. I was hoping. So it's going to be curious to see if Jalen Tolbert leapfrogs him this week. I think he will. I don't know if Brandon Cooks is beat up a little bit, but I think Jalen Tolbert, okay, that's a first. We just taking reps, y'all. I don't know if I can turn off the automatic joint, but we might just have to wave our hands in the air like we don't care every so often. But Jalen Tolbert had a good game. I think week 2 looked explosive, made a big play on the right sideline, probably like a 20, 30-yard reception for Dak. That looked encouraging. It's like, okay, this is why I drafted him where I did. Like, this should have been here a couple years ago. But we'll see how that goes. Or if Mike McCarthy even tries to focus there. Excuse me. Moving on. Falcons versus the Saints. Both quarterbacks looked really good throughout the game. They had moments where they were wildly inaccurate, which was throwing me off early. But as they got to crunch time, they locked in. Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, I like both of them. I love both of them, honestly, as quarterbacks. Those are two of my favorite quarterbacks playing right now. As a Raiders fan, it still hurts. But live vicariously through the Saints. I like the Saints too. Beautiful defense on both sides, particularly in big moments. The defensive backs had great closing speed, get into the wide receivers. I like both of the defensive backfields, Raheem Morris and who's on the Dennis Allen is, I don't know if he has another DC there, but he's like the defensive mind. But it ended up coming down to some pretty crazy plays. Let's just get to it. Rashid Shaheed, he fumbled the opening punt of the game from the Falcons after they had already went down and scored on their first drive, the Saints. And that opened the door for Atlanta to remain in the game. I think they were down 14-0 actually. And then Shaheed fumbles. The Saints could have ran away with the game. They had a couple of different opportunities to do this actually. This was the first one where the Atlanta was like, their special teams and their defense was like, we're not going, not tonight. So they ended up, I believe, returning that, or they got a touchdown off of that drive, or they got some score off of that drive. I didn't have it in my notes. But the next Saints possession, Matthew Judon ended up tipping the pass up in the air to Troy Anderson, who had a whale of a game, 17 total tackles, and then he got this pick six to solidify the momentum being flipped in the second quarter, or at least balanced out. Then Kirk Cousins tried to test Paulson Adebo a few times on the first drive in the third quarter, got a nice fade and was getting some nice passes out to Darnell Mooney from the Bears. They had a lot of missed connections, but they did end up making the right connection at the right time. I'll get to that. The Falcons' defense was holding up tremendously as they got their backs to the goal line, particularly in the fourth quarter. They ended up earning a fourth down stop against the Saints. The offense didn't do a lot to help them out on the following drive. They went 3 and out, didn't really take a lot of time off of the clock. But the Saints continued to apply pressure to the defense, and eventually the Falcons defense broke. The Saints went up. I forget what the score was at that point. It's only 24-26. It felt like they had a much higher score than that. Didn't they go into the overtime? This is the wrong game. What week is this? Saints, Falcons. Am I talking about the Falcons? I'm talking about the Falcons and the Saints. Oh, you know what it is? Again, Saturday, October 5th, 2024. I'm thinking about that game from this past Thursday. I'm mixing those games together because both games came down to the fourth quarter and or overtime for the second one, and the Falcons, yeah. But we'll talk about that next week. I'm gonna try to start recording on Wednesday, so that way you won't have to worry about me mixing games up. My bad. Falcons Saints, week 4. But yeah, the Alvin Kamara was just gashing the Falcons defense all night long. The run defense was not what Raheem Morris wants it to be, I'm sure, but he doesn't necessarily have the horses either. Grady Jarrett has been back. He's been effective. Matt Judon, I'll touch on in a little second. He's actually been a liability. Hasn't really been effective on the pass rush, and maybe it's because they haven't been up enough to where he can really pin his ears back and just go. But he also hasn't affected much in the run. Like, he's had spots, but I don't know if he's getting old, if it's because he's getting older or if he's just, I don't know what it is. He has not been as effective in the run as consistently as he needs to be, or in the pass either, as for what they went and got him for. Penalties and pressures messed up multiple drives for the Falcons. There was a touchdown to Bijan in the fourth quarter that was called back for holding. They definitely have to shore that up a little bit more. But then on the last drive, Paulson Adebo ended up getting a pass interference where he could have put the game away. He tried to make up for it with a big deflection on third down, but Kirk Cousins, your boy Kirk Cousins, he had already driven them into field goal range with that pinpoint accuracy that I was speaking on. He went 21 for 35, 238. He threw a pick, no touchdowns, but he made the plays he needed to make for them to win the game. He leaned on his guys. He got Kyle Pitts more involved, got Drake London more involved. And I'll talk about Bijan in a second too, because it didn't help. He didn't help Kirk as much as he should have or could have. All of this being said, the Saints are just applying pressure, pulling away. The Falcons fight back. The Falcons ended up winning the game 26-24 on a Younghoe Koo. That's how you pronounce it. A Younghoe Koo 58-yard field goal to win the game with time expiring. I think he had missed. Nope, that was the next game. Again, mixing games together. But he's had a rocky season. The fans in Atlanta love him. They're cheering his name kind of like cool, like a bird, right? As he's preparing to kick his field goals. He's missed some. He's shanked some. He's not been what he's been in recent years as far as his level of play, but he's come up big this season to keep them alive in the South. And that'll be 2 NFC South wins, including this Thursday game, that are really, really big for them going down the stretch into the playoffs for tie-breaking purposes. So just going a little bit more into this game, Kirk Cousins got Pitts more involved, but even still, up until Thursday, the question was, where is he at? He just, for all of intents and purposes, to get Kirk Cousins there, to have the effective quarterback to get him the ball, because they blamed it on Desmond Ridder, they blamed it on Arthur Smith, it was still like, where is he at? I think in this Week 4 game, he only had 3 targets, no catches. So getting him more involved was more than 1 target, right? 3 targets was getting him more involved up until this past game. But he has since redeemed himself. I think they made a more concerted effort. Zach Robinson, the OC, it's like, we're wasting this guy's talent. We got to figure it out. Same thing with London. He had 6 catches for 64 yards, but that's not what they drafted him for either. 12 targets, not a very efficient outing for him. A lot of that was on Kirk because he was selling a lot of passes high, which I mentioned at the top of this recap. Relatively inaccurate on quite a few throws. They tried to lean on the play action. It was tough because what I was going to say about Bijan, he's not been even the Bijan of last season, his rookie year, let alone the Bijan we and the Falcons, I'm sure, expected him to be as the number one running back, potentially top 5 guy in the league. He just hasn't been that. Haven't seen that from him. We've seen the highlights. I saw somebody, it posted in my group chat, Bijan Robinson is Trevor Lawrence in that he gives you all the highlights in the world to prove his college talent without the production. All of the highlights, like what we saw in college, minus that production, that level of production. And I kind of winced because I'm like, dang, it's only Bijan's second year. But watching the tape last week and this week and throughout this season, I'm like, yeah, I'd be waiting for Bijan to really take over a game at running back or out of the backfield. What Kamara's doing. Maybe it's the OC that, created the offense that works for Kamara. Maybe Zach Robinson hasn't done that for Bijan or the OC before that. I don't know. What I do know is I haven't seen it. I've seen glimpses, seen opportunities, but Bijan should be and could be doing what Saquon's doing what Kamara's doing what Kyron Williams is doing. He could. He's relatively physical, although that's not his strength. He can work between the tackles. He can get outside. He can line up a receiver. He's versatile. He can do it. All of that stuff. Just haven't seen it. And because he hasn't been as effective as what that offense is built for him to be, I think it limits Kirk Cousins with his limitations, not being a mobile quarterback, working heavy on play action, trying to stay in rhythm on 3-step, 5-step. Defenses are like, well, we don't fear Kirk like that. And we don't fear Bijan like that. So what we're going to do is crowd the box, crowd your receivers, who we don't respect either, and we're going to make you make plays, which Kirk Cousins has still been doing. But I'm looking at Bijan, I'm looking at Zach Robinson. They've got to get him more involved on the ground and out of the backfield so the play action opens up, so the screens open up, and so Kirk Cousins can have better passing lanes to hit more receivers. In the meantime, while Darnell Mooney was hit or miss before Thursday and Drake London was more in that wide receiver 2 range in terms of his production, Kyle Pitts was in the shadows. Ray McLeod had been a godsend. Journeyman, gadget guy, kind of receiver, been on multiple teams, mostly a returner. He came out balling for the Falcons and really has saved Kirk Cousins multiple times just by getting open. Get open, Kirk will find you, and that's what he's done. And then just make the catch. So he'll have 6, 7, 8 receptions, 60, 70, 80 yards. But it'll be in crucial moments when Kirk needs it so the offense can keep moving forward. And that's continued into this past game. Clark Phillips III, I really liked what I saw from him flying around. I think he's working in the nickel. You got A.J. Terrell, and then I forget who's on the other side. It might be Clark. I don't know if it's Clark or someone else. But very physical, which I didn't expect from somebody his size. He's a little bit smaller, a little bit slighter, but very physical. As far as the Saints, I really like watching the stretch run scheme from Clint Kubiak, who's from the Gary Kubiak tree, who's from the Broncos tree of Shanahan, who also has the Kyle Shanahan branch as his son. And all of them lean on that stretch run scheme as their primary blocking scheme. I love it. It's beautiful. I loved it when the Broncos did it in the late 90s. I love it now. CMC, I feel like benefits from the scheme, but it's not really his. It just doesn't seem like that's really his thing. I think he's just going to be good wherever he's at. But Kamara needed this scheme. He needed it. His production had dipped to the point where people thought he had fell off and he had lost a step. And I'm like, nah, Kamara still like that. It's not right. It's not right over there. Get Clint Kubiak over there, and you see the Saints offense went from middle of the pack, hit or miss last season, to top offense in the league. Probably outside of the Ravens. Top offense in the conference. So I really love that scheme, especially when they switch it up. Throw Taysom Hill in there or Jamal Williams, more physical, bigger guys to wear on the defense. They get those running lanes and put one foot in the ground, get north and south, and find somebody to punish and wear down. And by the time the third quarter and the fourth quarter comes, the defense don't want nothing to do with that. So I love that. I love that offense. Helps Kirk Carr's accuracy, very similar to Kirk Cousins. Did I say Kirk Carr? Derek Carr's accuracy, very similar to Kirk Cousins. Also works off of play action, very heavy. And when it's working, it's working. He's getting out on boots, straight draw. I mean, he's back there comfortable in ways that he rarely was in Oakland or Vegas. And that I enjoy seeing that, even though it's with different colors. He's enjoying himself. He's having fun. He's letting the league see that, no, I'm like that. When I was top 10 that one season, or when I was in the MVP race that one season before I broke my leg, or when I got my team to the playoffs, like I'm really that. I'm not that guy that turns the ball over 2-3 times. I'm not that. Help me out and watch what I be. And I think that's what he's doing. It's beautiful to watch. Olave, although I'm not the biggest Olave fan personally, his skill set, just like Amari Cooper, who I also shaking on personally, they are two of the best route runners in the league, if not the two best. Olave destroying defenses in the middle of the field, dig routes, post routes, all the intermediate, comeback, hit, slant, smoke. His tree makes it easier for Shaheed, who's also developed as a route runner instead of just being a speed guy, deep guy. And both of them are eating off of that, especially on that play action. What else did I want to say? The offensive line, notably, was firing off every play. They look like they're looking for somebody to fight, not just a block. Like they want to fight somebody. They got a really nasty offensive line in New Orleans. And it's kind of like what they have in Indianapolis. And I wasn't expecting them to be that physical, like that intent on looking for physicality. Like if it came to them, okay, you're a lineman. But like they're seeking it out, especially on that stretch, working to the second level, trying to catch nickelback, safeties, weak side linebackers, and punish them. It's a fun offense to watch. It's the type of offense I like. I like Andy Reid. I like Baltimore. Baltimore is equally physical, if not more physical, but aesthetically, the aesthetic combined with the physicality, for me, the Saints, most fun offense to watch. So that's that on that. Right? Rams versus the Bears. Not really a fan of either team. One for obvious reasons. The other, I just never got into the bear. I mean, maybe it's the logo is just boring. The colors are awful. Worst colors in professional sports for a sports team to me. And Chicago. Friendly rivalry. I don't want to give them nothing. But it was a good game between the two. There was a punt to the one after the first Bears drive, which would be a recurring pattern for the Bears and their punter, Torrey Taylor, throughout the game, to the extent that I would say he was probably the player of the game for the Bears. The Bears ended up winning the game, if I'm not mistaken, 24-18. They did. And a lot of it was premised on good field position and good defense. Caleb Williams didn't do anything spectacular. 157 yards, 1 touchdown. But that defense and this guy, Torrey Taylor, consistently set the offense up to do their thing. DeAndre Swift finally popped out and had a game. But I'll touch on all that. Again, Tory Taylor had a great punt to the 1-yard line after the first Bears drive. And then on the second drive, they had to punt again. This time he corked out a 63-yard punt, booming punt with good hang time, giving the special teams, the punt team, the Gunners an opportunity to make the tackle, flipping the field. There was a bad pass for the Rams following drive, I believe the third drive, that led to a pick in the end zone for Matthew Stafford. But Jaquan Brisker had stepped out of bounds and didn't reestablish himself in bounds before he got the pick. So it gave the Rams an opportunity to get their second field goal of the game at the beginning of the second quarter. Montez Sweat, who's been relatively quiet after a really good season between the Commanders and the Bears last year, leading both teams in sacks and basically half a season for each. He ended up getting on the board this year with a matchup against, I think it was Kobe Parkinson, a tight end. And I forget the receiver's name. They tried to double team him, which a double team between a offensive lineman and a tight end, or offensive lineman and a running back, or offensive lineman and a receiver, you can get away with that. But two skilled guys against somebody his size and his athleticism, nah. He was licking his lips. Took advantage. He got a sack fumble on that drive, and that led to a Bears touchdown. The Bears tried to get another the Rams tried to follow up with a field goal from Joshua Carty, but the wind in the Windy City ended up sending that field goal attempt into the woods, into the stand somewhere. It just blew his field goal attempt all the way off the field. And it was really swirling there at Soldier Field as well. There was a big screen play for DeAndre Swift, who I mentioned earlier, had a really big game. This kind of opened it up for him. Took it all the way into field goal range right before halftime and gave the Bears kicker Cairo Santos his only field goal of the game. He went 1 for 1. So at half, I forget what the score was. Halftime, it was 10-6 Chicago. Then there was a quality drive for Caleb Williams near the end of the third quarter. He had an impressive back shoulder throw to DJ Moore on the back line to get a quality touchdown. That was probably his best throw of the game. And then there was a follow-up touchdown from Kyron Williams on a good drive from the Rams, but they missed the 2-point conversion, and it left them at a disadvantage to where they had to try to go for more. They had to press a little bit more versus they could have been in just trying to get a field goal at the end of the game. Then DeAndre Swift got his first touchdown of the season on a big, patient run, extending the lead to 9. That was right at about 2:29 left. Nope. How much time was left in the third quarter? Oh, no, this was the fourth quarter. About 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, right at the beginning. Matt Stafford started standing in that pocket. He was getting pressured all game. Really wasn't able to take advantage of his prowess with the play action or traditional 3-5 step drop because that Bears pass rush was in his grill. He just started standing there, eating those shots, taking those efforts and those rushes from the defenders and delivering. It was beautiful to watch. It really was. And he started getting them opportunities to tie the game up in the fourth, but he couldn't get the ball in the end zone. They got one touchdown in the third, and then it was just one field goal after that. The Bears defense just kept hunkering down as he got them in the field goal range, and they would take him out of field goal range. Again, another 63-yard punt from Tory Taylor to have the ball down inside the 10-yard line for the Rams. And there was another punt at the end of the game, the final punt for the Bears, that had like that kind of that backspin that you would put on a golf ball or a golf shot, hit right at the 5-yard line instead of toppling into the end zone, spun back to about the 10 or just before the 10. And the Rams basically had to work the length of the field the entire game because of Torrey Taylor. If there was better field position for the Rams, there may have been a wildly different score. Instead of being 24-18 Chicago, it could have been like 35-24, if that. For the opportunities where the Rams got close to field goal range or they got close to a touchdown, but because they had to work those extra 15, 20 yards, the defense had an opportunity to bow up. Like I was saying earlier about Stafford, I feel like he's just mastered football, right? I'm sure he's put in his 10,000 hours. I'm sure. Probably 30, 40, 50,000 at this point throughout the course of his football life, going back to high school. But he hasn't always had that consistent protection or that consistent support from his weapons. We saw it in the Super Bowl year with the Rams. We've seen it a couple times in Detroit, but not many. I can't really name off the top of my head, just being respectful, any other receivers other than Megatron. Maybe Nate Burleson. Was he there? Or was that before? Mike Williams, one of the first ones, USC. I don't know. I don't know who was there. I don't know who's been there during his time outside of Megatron that was really like, Golden Tate, I think, was in Detroit for a time. Right? But yeah, it took him getting to L.A., and then when he got to L.A., you got Cooper Kupp. Here comes Puka Nacua. Now you got Kyron Williams. Even though the receivers have been hurt, then the offensive line starts to get shaky to the point where they had the Super Bowl hangover the following year, and it was just like, dog, y'all could have went back-to-back with how y'all looked last season. Everything was there. The defense might have changed up a little bit. Aaron Donald was still there. So it's unfortunate that he hasn't had that same high-level, consistent support as some of the other all-time greats, because he has an all-time great arm, all-time great accuracy, and he looks like it's almost like he's a painter. If you've ever watched a painter painting a masterpiece or just creating a original work of art just from their brain, something they may have seen or conceptualized, it's like what he's doing, like just the arm angles, like coming over the top, side arm, like flipping, shoveling the ball, like no look, like it's like watching a work of art. And it's beautiful to watch. He's going to be one of the quarterbacks I'm going to be frustrated about when he retires because of his artistry. He's not just drop back, same throwing motion, same, like, he is comfortable creating. He's a creator when nothing else is there. I think back to that game they had against the Ravens last season. That was a classic. Yeah, you're just not going to get too many of those. Patrick Mahomes had to have gotten something from Matthew Stafford, if we're being honest. There's no way, both of them being Texas quarterbacks as far as high school. But I digress. The offensive line, as I just mentioned, they didn't do much, but they did just enough to open up those slivers and those holes for Kyron Williams to consistently get to the second level. What was his stat line? 19 rushes for 94 yards, 1 touchdown, 4.9 yards per carry. Very, very good game. Probably could have been a better game if he had just a little bit better blocking, but, I mean, that's like saying water is wet. Him and Ronnie Rivers helped to open up those play actions and those passing game and the passing game overall, the passing lanes late in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, and it wore down the Bears in the second half. But again, the Bears just needed those in those different drives, one stop, and now the Bears get an opportunity to help flip the field. Shout out to Florida State. I'm a big Florida State fan. Although they have tremendously let me down this season, especially after Jordan Travis got hurt. It just seemed like, okay, well, everybody go to the portal, everybody go to the draft. Mike Norvell got his new contract. Oh well. And it looks like that on the field. I never been a big fan of DJU. I thought he was gonna be better than what he was, or what he is. And for whatever reason, that's what we thought was the answer after we've seen pretty much his whole college career. And now we're paying for it. But as far as Florida State guys in the league, Jalen Ramsey. But for the Rams this season, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk made big plays. They kept Caleb Williams uncomfortable all game. So that was a highlight for the Rams, especially losing Aaron Donald. It still gives their defense viability and effectiveness to help the offense out a little bit, even though it's not as dominant. The Bears, I mentioned DeAndre Swift. The running game finally came to life. I want to know what changed. I'm probably getting into the all-22 and see like if the blocking schemes were different or if he was just hitting a hole different. I don't know. But with someone of his talent, it took way too long for him to show it in Chicago as he had in Detroit and Philly. Caleb Williams still does not look comfortable. It's not the pass rush. I mentioned the guys, Florida State and others, who did get pressures on Caleb, but a lot of those attempts, he missed 6 throws, which isn't a lot, but he just didn't look comfortable. Like, I think it'll come, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. I think it will. But he looked like he was still unsteady, working up into the pocket. It was instantly bail out, throw it away, dump it off, or just take sacks. And it's like, I think the expectations have been raised from seeing these other rookie quarterbacks get it instantaneously. And we're seeing it with more frequency than we ever have in the history of the league, whereas quarterbacks used to sit for a year, 2 years, 3 years. Now they're coming in rookie year, first game, 300 yards, 400 yards games, 4 touchdown games, top 10 passing seasons, rookie year. So I don't want to put that pressure on them, but folks have kind of put that pressure on him by saying he's the next Patrick Mahomes. They had to pull back on that as he was getting ready to get drafted, but it was already out there. The comparisons were there. And adding the weapons that they added in the offseason with Keenan Allen, who I don't even know if – did he play? He had 3 catches for 19 yards. I don't remember him being on the field. I watched the whole game. I don't remember him being on the field, let alone getting 3 catches. Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, the 3 of them had 7 catches for 51 yards between the 3 of them against the Rams. Is that Caleb Williams? Is it them? I don't know. But the offense just it doesn't look how everyone expected it to look yet. I'll give him that. Jaquan Brisker, love watching him play downhill. Big safety. I don't know how tall he is. How tall is Jaquan Brisker? He's only 6'1". He looks huge. Pause. 6'1", 200 pounds. Coming downhill, thumping guys in the run game and on blitzes, getting sacks, affecting everything in the box, and also in the secondary, getting interceptions. I think he had a pick and a pass deflection. Couple tackles for losses as well, 8 solo tackles. He had a really good game, as he has since he's been in the league. Yeah, so that's on that. Packers versus the Vikings. I mentioned Sam Bradford earlier. By default, any team that has roots in St. Louis, I'm going to root for them because I'm from St. Louis, right? Hometown over everything. Blues, Cardinals. Shout out to St. Louis SC. I went to my first game for them. They won. It was a lit atmosphere. Shout out to the Ambush. I know it's not St. Louis, but that's still in the area. I digress. We had an NBA team at one point, and that team won a championship in St. Louis before they went to the city that they're currently in. That's some trivia for you. Go find out what team in the NBA used to be in St. Louis and is currently playing in another city, but they won a championship during their NBA years in St. Louis. Some trivia for you. We've got a rich sports history. So when that team in LA was in St. Louis, I was all in on the putrid, terrible, awful years that they played football with Sam Bradford and Steven Jackson and company, where they had maybe 7 wins in 5 seasons. They had like the worst 5-year stretch in NFL history as far as record. I was rooting for them. I was on the bandwagon, and then they left. Sam Bradford, I feel like, showed so many opportunities to be the number 1 overall pick that he was. But he didn't get the consistent, as I mentioned with Stafford and I've mentioned with others, he didn't get consistent protection and support with his skill guys and with the overall team that he needed to develop and grow into what he should have been. Number one, in hindsight, I didn't think about this at the time. Jeff Fisher's your coach. What quarterback is he known for developing? From the time that the Titans touched the field in Nashville, formerly the Oilers, all the way up to the time that he joined the Rams in St. Louis, he was not a quarterback whisperer. He was a defensive coach. He's a defensive player in the league. Steve McNair got off because he was Steve McNair. Vince Young got off because he was Vince Young. Their athleticism, and I'm thinking through it as I'm talking, their athleticism was what accounted for Jeff Fisher's insufficiencies as a head coach and whatever offensive coordinator he used to have under him at that time. They weren't just like reading defenses and developing and becoming prolific passers. They were athletes. And I think it was the same thing with Mariota, just trying to win off of pure athleticism. I don't know if Fisher was still there, and I think Fisher was gone by that time. But when Fisher got Sam Bradford, who is the opposite, he's the opposite of Vince Young. He's the opposite of Steve McNair in terms of approach to the game. Purely accurate, purely pocket. And you have this track record of not going all in on developing these guys because for some reason you keep ending up getting these top 5, top 10 quarterbacks for whatever reason. And you get this one that can't bail you out because he's not mobile. He can't move. And we saw what happened. You had a top 10 running back in the NFL for the course of his career, Steven Jackson. You had some receivers. I mean, Danny Amendola at one point was in St. Louis. Brandon Gibson's solid, serviceable number 2 receiver. They weren't great guys, but they were good enough to build with. Denario Alexander, shout out to him. Like, there were guys, and who else did they have? Kenny Britt. I mean, there's something could have been done with that talent. So those offenses struggled. Sam Bradford goes to Philly, has productive seasons. He goes to Minnesota, which I arrived back at, the Vikings. He had a productive season or 2, I believe, where people were like, dang, Sam Bradford's actually playing kind of good. Almost got these 2 teams to the playoffs, if not the playoffs. I don't fully remember. But, like, he had under-the-radar good seasons once he left St. Louis. All of that to say, we see now, in this current landscape in 2024 and last year, the revival of careers for quarterbacks who get in situations where they are invested in. As much as they get paid, as much as they're considered the face of franchises and most important players and most valuable players by default because of their position, as much as we believe all of that stuff, it's taken until now, 100 years into the NFL, to realize, oh, well, maybe we should invest in these guys since they're so important. Maybe we should invest in the Geno Smith and not just toss him to the Wolves. Maybe we should invest in Jared. Well, Jared Goff's different. Goff is different because he had success with McVay. I just think he fell out of favor. Just wasn't the type that McVay wanted. But he had success. Maybe we should invest in Baker Mayfield. Maybe we should invest in whoever else you want to name. Sam Darnold is the perfect representation, another Sam, perfect representation of that comparison. Both of them to go to Minnesota later in their careers, even though Sam Darnold, I think, is only like 27. Sam Darnold is still young in the NFL. Sam Darnold was like Sam Bradford was way later in his career by the time he exited St. Louis. But Darnold has fallen into the perfect circumstance. I watched it all offseason. I was very happy for it. I knew they were going to draft a quarterback. They got McCarthy. I think McCarthy was going to start. I thought he was going to start. But before McCarthy's injury, before he tore his ACL, what's his name? Kevin McConnell said that Darnold would start the season. So there was enough there. Sam Darnold showed what he could do in San Francisco, backing up Brock Purdy, having to start a game, I believe, and playing a couple others. He showed the talent. He showed the talent when he was in Carolina for a stint. But when they were bridging between the Cam Newton trying to come back and Bryce Young and their transitioning owners and all that, he showed the talent there, under the radar. And he actually showed the talent where he got drafted as well in New York for the Jets. He showed the talent. He had been showing the talent. He didn't get the support. So watching him in Minnesota, again, most enjoyable offenses to watch, I put the Saints at the top. I would have the Vikings right there. I mean, you got Justin Jefferson. That's manna from heaven. All right, it's just falling down for you. You ain't got to work for it. You ain't got to pay for it. It's just free. Here you go, Justin Jefferson in your lap. Enjoy. Pause. I hate that we're in this era where that's even a thing. Just how about you just get your minds out of the gutter? Because you're taking it in ways I didn't mean it. How about that? But you got Justin Jefferson. You got Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson, we got news this week. He's in his practice window to be activated, coming back from his injury last season. Aaron Jones comes over from the Packers. I wish he could have got to enjoy some of the Dalvin Cook era, but some distance there. You got offense. And guess what? You got a defense too. Hell of a defense with Brian Flores. So, for me, no surprise, understandably, Vikings 4-0. The team was already there before Darnold got there. The same team that Kirk Cousins had an opportunity to win with last year when they started. I think they started 4-0 last year or 3-1. They had a hot start last year before Kirk Cousins got hurt. I thought that the Vikings were on their way to win the NFC and represent the conference in the Super Bowl. I thought for sure they'd win the division, regardless of what the Lions had been doing. I had picked the Vikings, and I was still with the Vikings up until Kirk got hurt. So for me, that team was already there. Kirk could have been doing the same thing in Minnesota now as what Sam Darnold's doing. No slight to Sam Darnold, but it's Sam Darnold's opportunity to show that he's capable of doing it. That's what I appreciate. He's showing that he can make the throws. He's showing that he's comfortable in the pocket. He's showing that he can move outside of the pocket. He has the decision making. He has the confidence. I enjoy it. He had an opportunity this week too to take a shot at the Jets. Somebody gave him a alley-oop. Like, do you feel like the Jets failed you? Basically was the question. And he was like, no, I think I could have done a lot more there. It's like, man, that's a class dude. That's a class dude. So my soliloquy for the episode, he ended up helping Jordan Addison be welcomed back into the starting lineup after Addison missed a few games with injury. Hit him immediately with a 29-yard touchdown pass to continue his dominant start to the year. I think he's like top 3 in passing right now. And then the avalanche took off for the Vikings against the Packers, and it just continued throughout the first half. Packers missed 2 field goals. Who's their kicker? I think it's a rookie, if I'm not mistaken. Rookie kicker. Braden Narvison. I think he's a rookie. He missed 2 field goals, and that was it for the day for him as far as field goals. Jordan Love threw 2 of his 3 interceptions in the first half, and Darnold just took advantage. He hit Josh Oliver for a touchdown. He got them in range again for Jordan Addison to get his second touchdown, but this time it was on a run. and they ran the score up to 28-0. So it looked like a runaway game for the Vikings. And then Jalen Naylor, who had been filling in for Addison admirably, looking like a good, solid number 3, he opened the door for Green Bay to come back, receiving a punt right before halftime and muffing the punt. And then Jordan Love quickly found Jaden Reed for the turnaround touchdown to flip the momentum before the half. It seemed like Jalen Naylor was just very casual getting over to the ball and wasn't in the right position. And he ended up paying the price for that. Getting to the fourth quarter, as the Packers started to press and Jordan Love started to get his rhythm after he had been out for a couple weeks to injury, which could have been much worse from how it looked. I think it was that Eagles game. He ended up catching fire in the fourth quarter. He found Dontavion Wicks and he found Tucker Kraft for touchdowns. And then the defense for the Packers helped out in between those two drives. Keyshawn Nix blitzing off of the edge to get a sack fumble on Sam Darnold, one of his rare mistakes, which wasn't really his fault. He just didn't see it. It was from his blind side, which ended up closing that gap in the fourth quarter from 28-0 to 28-22. Packers trying to make that comeback. There was a crucial field goal from Will Richard on the following drive to keep it a 2-score lead, which was what proved to be the difference. Flores' defense, Brian Flores' defense, earned 2 takeaways from the Packers on the next 2 drives. They got a pick off of Jordan Love for his 3rd pick of the game, and then a forced fumble. Both of them came from Byron Murphy, who has been balling. It's something about, and I'm going to have to do a bigger study on this, the defensive backfields for the best defenses in the league seem to have taken over the defenses. Like, it used to be, okay, you got to have a dominant linebacking core. You have to have a dominant pass rush, front 7, or defensive linemen, defensive ends, outside linebackers. It seems like the top defenses now have to have they have to have the best defensive backfields. Seattle, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, New Orleans, the Falcons, like all of these top defenses, even though the Falcons, their run defenses, trash. But like overall defenses, the other 4, their defensive backfields are nuts. And the Vikings are no exception. Byron Murphy, Cameron Bynum, who else is over there? They got Stephon Gilmore, who's kind of just filling a role but needed savvy veteran presence. Harrison Smith is still there. Those dudes are balling. Josh Metellus. Anyway, Byron Murphy got those 2 turnovers, kept them from having enough time to complete the comeback, the Packers. So final score ended up being 31-29. They did get 1 more touchdown, but it was just too little too late as far as the comeback. Jordan Love, much more impressive in the second half. Good runway for him going into the rest of the season, shake off that rust. He just started a little bit too late. They ran out of time, to be honest, because the Vikings offense started to sputter in that second half. Aaron Jones has been staying healthy, which is encouraging. He was starting to get that label of being fragile, but he's actually been the unsung catalyst for the offense in that he has done what I mentioned for other quarterbacks, what they've needed or what they have, taking pressure off of the quarterback, taking pressure off of as far as the defensive backs or the defense in general, crowding the line of scrimmage, filling the box. Aaron Jones has basically run them into the box and opening up the outsides, the deep middle, the corners, on play actions and everything else. A lot of quarterbacks, a lot of offenses have seemed to follow that model and come back to that traditional drop back. And they still line up a lot in shotgun. Seeing a lot of, which I just hate to see, shotgun handoffs. I don't even know what the play is called. I want to call it a draw because it's not like, there's a pass fake or it's just catch the ball handoff, which I don't know. I have to see what the logic is behind that, as opposed to traditional under center snap, turn, figure out what kind of handoff or what kind of steps you want to take to set up the run, have linemen pull, stretch, whatever. I just think it gives you more options and more versatility versus out of shotgun. The Vikings have done enough of the latter to help Darnold out so he can enjoy what Derek Carr enjoys, what Stafford enjoys, and what other quarterbacks get to enjoy with the play action. Kirk Cousins. I mentioned earlier, the offense is my second favorite to watch in the NFL right now. The Vikings defense is the same. It's a joy to watch their defense. Their defensive players, just like the Saints, flying around, smacking everything. They attack the ball and they attack the players on offense like offensive players attack the ball or attack downfield. Like that's how, it seems like they play with an offensive mindset. We're not just going to receive or wait or react. We're going to force and dictate. And I love watching that. It's like the ball isn't just something to be retrieved or something to stop, rather. It's something to be retrieved. It's something to go get, something to go after. And anyone on the other side of that defense who has the ball, they end up having to pay for it. You know, they're going to pay for it some way, shape, or form. So I enjoy it. Texans versus the Jags. Take a drink. Texans versus the Jags. I made a note here, and I didn't look up the answer, but how many penalties did Houston have? Because they did not look like the Houston team we've grown accustomed to watching over the past season. See if I can find that real quick. Where's that game? I had to look somewhere different. But they had so many penalties that made me ask the question. And it actually allowed the game to be closer than what it should have been against the Jaguars. They started the game off with a muffed punt, and the Texans bailed the Jaguars out on that first drive with their own muffed punt. It seemed like that was a theme for the week. I don't know. These guys muffing punts. I know the ball for special teams is treated differently. It's a little bit more smooth and slippery. It hasn't been like treated or sanded or mudded as the balls that the quarterbacks use. And that might be contributing to it, but it feels like this always been like that. So it's like been a rise in muff punts. But Texans bailed the Jags out. Brian Thomas ended up getting, I believe, his first touchdown on the season. Can confirm. That was his second touchdown of the season. His first touchdown was week 1. Second touchdown of the season, and the Jaguars' first lead of the season. Now, that is confirmed, which is pretty sad for the offense that they got. On the next drive, there was a innovative play from C.J. Stroud handing the ball off to Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs tried to considered a throwback to the quarterback, probably did set something up downfield. Defense for the Jags, I don't know who it was, smartly covered C.J. Stroud, and Stephon Diggs takes off. It was a hard play design. I liked it, but Diggs was like, F it, I'm going to just get in the end zone myself, and that's what he did. On the next drive, Trevor Lawrence missed a touchdown to Brian Thomas on a fade down the left sideline. They ended up settling for a field goal, and he missed again on the next drive. Talking about themes, muff punts, sailing passes high and deep. Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. Who was in the last game? Matt Stafford, Trevor Lawrence. It seemed like that was happening much more frequently with guys. Like your star guys, they're open. I don't know, accuracy. Something else to look up. Is accuracy down? This in as far as downfield. Is that why quarterbacks have started throwing way, 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 way more in the short intermediate parts of the field. Because I know that was a topic a couple weeks ago about like, oh, they need to ban cover two. Two high safeties is cheating. It's destroying the game. It's ruining this and that. It's like, well, maybe those quarterbacks just ain't accurate down the field. Maybe that's what's really destroying the game. We'll look into that. Speaking of, as the theme continued, he missed Christian Kirk high on a naked post early in the third quarter. No pressure on Trevor Lawrence whatsoever. Could have been a touchdown, but he just very similar to Caleb Williams. He looked uncomfortable in the pocket throughout. Ended up taking a sack on that third down. And the Jaguars defense settled in coming out of halftime, leaned more on the run game to get goal-to-goal twice. They started playing a little bit better, but the play calling just started to stagnate on the second drive. They ran that shotgun handoff. They ran that twice, and then a quarterback draw on fourth down. It was an ugly finish to the game for a quarterback supposedly the caliber of Trevor Lawrence and a head coach supposedly the caliber, well, I ain't going to say supposedly, it's documented, the caliber of Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning head coach, former NFL quarterback, somebody who brought along Jalen Hurts and is supposed to have been somewhat of a developer of quarterbacks, Nick Foles, Carson Wentz. But then this happens. You can't get Trevor Lawrence going. You did for parts of one season. They get to the playoffs. But now it's just like, man, Christian Kirk is back involved in the offense. You've got Brian Thomas doing his thing. ATN, when he stays on the field and doesn't get nicked up, he's efficient. Tank Bigsby in a backup role to ATN, he's efficient. Why are they not getting more than 20 points a game? And again, I didn't see a lot of pressure. Like, it wasn't like Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson was on his neck. They've been relatively quiet after week one. They have not been what they should have been as a tandem, a pass rushing tandem. So it wasn't like he was just like fighting for his life every drive, like Stafford. He had a lot of time to throw the ball. I don't know what it was. Speaking of the Texans, Nico Collins, shout out to Nico Collins, Michigan guy. He leads the league in receiving, and he's actually on pace for 2,000 yards. Now, I know that's not sustainable, but that's what he's doing right now. That's how good he's playing. He is the top receiver in the NFL currently. Not Justin Jefferson, not Jamar Chase, not Amon-Ra St. Brown, not CeeDee Lamb. Nico Collins. I just wasn't expecting that. When I saw him on their 2-14 year with Lovie Smith before they got Stroud, I thought for sure he'd be a solid number 2 receiver. I didn't see the explosiveness. I didn't see the number 1 receiver capabilities. And he actually looked smaller. Maybe just different camera angles. He looked smaller than he looks now. He was a good receiver, effective receiver. I just didn't see this when I would watch those games. And I watched almost every Texans game that year with Davis Mills. He was a really good receiver. He looked good. And that was the year Damian Pierce went off. But, man, night and day. Or I won't say night and day, just levels and levels above. So, it really enjoyable to watch, very physical. No one can match up with him well. He was destroying the Jags defense, and their defensive backs have been hobbled. So, it's kind of punching down, but even still, it was impressive to watch him dominate in that way. Very T.O.-ish. They've been trying to compare him to Andre Johnson, too, which I can see that. Stephon Diggs working underneath is a great compliment. It allows both of them to eat. Defenses don't know who to focus on or give attention to. And then Tank Dell's going to be coming back soon from injury. That's going to be a scary offense. Going to be scary. I would say that C.J. Stroud hasn't stumbled yet. His trajectory has only been up from his time at Ohio State into the league. He's much more comfortable, much more confident than he already was is just improved. More decisive, more patient in the pocket, especially on the game-winning drive at the end of the game. Got efficient running from Cam Akers, another Florida State guy. Good to see him back healthy, getting the opportunity, although it's been in relief of Mixon, who's been hurt. But even in a relief effort, hopefully he gets more opportunities to show his talent, his capability, why he was drafted highly with the Rams. Because it wasn't like so good of a running game that the Texans could just line up and, or do all the stuff that all these other quarterbacks I mentioned have been able to do off play action. Stroud has been lining up in shotgun, getting the ball, firing. Maybe it's the offensive line, giving them that extra time, those extra couple seconds, but he has not really needed or used much help. It's just been him getting it in. Got extended, yes. But yeah, again, Mixon gets back healthy. Cam Akers as a compliment because I think he's kind of passed up Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce is more of a plodding running back, not too shifty, or he has to have more intentional scheme and setup in between the tackles. Whereas the current scheme works a lot better for Mixon and Cam Akers' skill set. So once all their horses are healthy, Houston is a dark horse, or maybe not so dark horse, to win the AFC. Competition, legitimate competition for the Chiefs. We'll see what happens with the Bills. We'll see what happens with the Ravens. And you got another team over there in Pittsburgh who we can't ignore. The non-losing season streak is definitely going to continue. The Jaguars. I mentioned where's Kyle Pitts earlier for the Falcons. Where is Josh Hines-Allen? Where is Trayvon Walker? Could say the same thing in Houston. Where is Danielle Hunter, who y'all paid this money for? Where's Will Anderson? Where are these pass rushing duos? I mentioned the controversy a few weeks ago about cover 2 and how 2 deep coverage, you like that? How that's been like taken away from the explosiveness of offenses. They've thrown a lot more shorter passes, a lot more screens, a lot more smokes, stuff closer to the line of scrimmage. But I don't know. Maybe I answered my own question. Because of that, because of the limited opportunities downfield and the quicker releases and less time from snap to throw, it's less opportunities for the pass rush. So that explains why my fantasy strategy sucks this year, because I invested in D-line. But even with that, when there was pass rush opportunities for these guys specifically, Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, I mean, I'm watching them fly by guys, fly by Stroud. I'm watching them press the outside shoulder of the tackles and just push them too far upfield, and then Stroud just slides up in the pocket very, again, calmly, patiently, easily. Or they're both crashing into each other as Stroud is escaping. It's just, I don't know. From what I saw Josh Hines-Allen do last season and what Trayvon Walker has been drafted to do as a compliment, very similarly to Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, relatively quiet. I'd like to think, okay, the reason is quarterbacks are getting the ball out quicker, but I didn't see that to be the case in this game. I saw them both missing. And not missing like Keenan Allen, missing like I'm close to the quarterback. I could make this play. I miss. I don't grab him. I step the wrong way. Whatever. I miss. So I don't know what that's about. ATN, Tank Bigsby both got shoulder injuries. Both have since been deemed healthy, so they'll be back in week 5. Ventrell Miller filled in admirably for Foye Oluokun. I got to figure out how to pronounce his last name correctly. And Devin Lloyd. Both of them were nicked up. Ventrell filled in admirably, 11 tackles, working sideline to sideline, looked very comfortable. He's going to get an opportunity somewhere if it's not in Jacksonville. I wonder if they'll move on from Fourier, because he used to be in Atlanta. He's been nicked, I think, 2 different times now in Jacksonville. Gotta see what his contract is looking like. If they might move on from him, I don't know. That'd be something to look into. Let's see. I want to touch on this last game. See how many we got left that I didn't get to. I'm going to touch on the Colts and the Steelers. Anthony Richardson. I'm trying not to be unnecessarily rude or mean, but man, he did come out firing. I will say that the plays that he had, the first 2 drives, he was really accurate. He was really accurate. Not being funny. He had a great layered pass to Michael Pittman Jr. on a corner route on the first play from scrimmage, and it seemed as though Shane Steichen was like, we are going to show everyone what this man's development has looked like, and we're going to show it throughout the course of the season. This is going to be the first example. And he looked good. But even with that great accuracy, even with that improved timing and improved confidence, next drive, injury. Thought it was a hip injury initially because that's what he was grabbing. Turned out to be an oblique injury. And we just got word today that he is doubtful to play in Week 5. I would say he's out. I think they're just like trying to be nice about it. But Joe Flacco, the immortal, picked up where Richardson left off. That first drive that Richardson had, they did get a touchdown from Jonathan Taylor. Flacco ended up throwing a touchdown to Josh Downs on the next drive, so they're up 14-0, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, there was a punt from the Steelers sandwiched in between. There was a big 4th down stop late in the first quarter by Zaire Franklin from the Colts on the Steelers. And then there was another field goal drive after that. So the Colts were actually up 17-0. Then there was a big fumble down the left sidelines by George Pickens late in the second quarter. He didn't tuck the ball away properly. Would it probably ended up being a touchdown drive if he had. But nevertheless, the Steelers did end up getting on the board before halftime. Calvin Austin, I just wedged this in here. One of the better returners this season, particularly on punt returns. Hasn't been like otherworldly. I don't think he has any touchdowns, but he has gotten the ball consistently closer to midfield than most of the rest of the league. He ended up flipping the field in the third quarter with a punt return. I forget how many yards it was. 30-yard punt return. But there were poor decisions by Justin Fields on that next drive to extend the play, which led to him fumbling the ball. He was just holding it too long, trying to extend the play, work back, and he fell without being touched, and forearm hit the ground, ball pops out, and the Colts recover it. So the Colts opted to run the ball on the next drive on 3rd and 7, even though they had gotten to the Steelers' side of the field. Instead of trying to pass for the first down, it was a weird play call for the Colts. and then they ended up missing the field goal on that drive. Justin Fields turns around on the next drive, leads them down for a touchdown, and now they're back in the game. What happened after that? Joe Flacco ended up responding. He got surgical. We know him for his big arm. We know him for working down the field, big passes, but he was just getting those intermediate shots in the middle of the field to help regain the cushion for the Colts. They went up 24-10. Fields comes back down, gets another touchdown. He's like, I'm not going, G. I think he had spent enough time in Chicago. He adapted that. He had big scrambles, and he had some design runs with linemen pulling around and leading the way. Banged his way into the end zone on a scramble, kept the game within 7 points at 24-17. And then there was another drive, which was a punt for the Colts, or it was a field goal from the Colts. And then Justin Fields had a beautiful rainbow pass, just dropped it in the bucket late in the fourth quarter on third down the left sidelines. I forget who he was throwing the ball to. And then he finished that drive with a strike to Pat Fryermuth in the end zone, got the game within 3 points. It was a very impressive comeback attempt for Justin Fields. Had the game narrowed to 24-27. The defense for the Steelers stood up. They forced a punt. Pass rush finally got home to get a sack. But I think Justin Fields just ran out of time. So the game ended 27-24. For the Colts, I noticed E.J. Speed. I hadn't really paid much attention to the linebacking core since Darius Leonard. I could not remember his name earlier this week. I know it was Darius something. But he just kind of faded into obscurity, ain't it? Like, what happened to him? The maniac. He went to the Eagles, and he just disappeared. I know he was having issues with concussions. Then he had a back injury. But to just, like, the way that he disappeared from playing at an all-pro level to, like, 2 seasons later just not being mentioned at all, nobody mentioning his name, is crazy. But Zaire Franklin comes, I think, from New York. And then they get E.J. Speed in the draft, I think 2022 or 2023. And he's just been hitting shit. Like, he's like, look, do you got on my team's colors or not? All right, well, you getting hit. 2019. He's been in the league for a minute. 5th round pick. But he's just now getting his opportunity. He's taking full advantage of it. Physical dude. He's meeting the Steelers in the hole or in the backfield throughout the game with force, like making them pay. So he really jumped out to me in that game. Joe Flacco, very similar to what happened down in Carolina once they opted to bench Bryce Young, immediately raised the utility and the opportunities for the entire offense. Michael Pittman Jr. looked like Michael Pittman Jr. again, number 1 receiver, as he should. Josh Downs, who had just come back from injury. Adonai Mitchell not getting involved as much yet, but they have enough receivers in Indy to where they don't have to force it. Kind of like Green Bay. Makes it a little weird as to why you draft Adonai where you do, but they've got everything. They've got running backs, they got receivers, they got O-line, they've got linebackers, they got a hell of a D-line. All first-rounders when healthy. Those guys should all be starters, along with the backups that they drafted. And then the secondary is crazy, too. They got a great team. Got to put it all together. I question whether it's going to be Anthony Richardson, even though he looked good at the beginning. I give him that, beginning of that game. I question whether he's going to be the guy middle of the season down the stretch of the season to bring all of that talent together to make a push into the playoffs and be a legitimate contender in the AFC. Mentioned the offensive line. Like I said, they pretty much neutralized the pass rush for the Steelers, which is no easy feat. Those pass rush guys have been pretty good up until this game. So impressive showing from them, especially to bring home the win. Cordell Patterson filled in for Jalen Warren. He looked pretty good, pretty fearless. It's amazing to think that he used to be the fastest guy in the league. No shade. Or at one point was one of the fastest guys in the league. Could have been considered for like the track and Olympics and all this stuff. He looks a little pudge now. He's got a little pudge. He's a little more solid, especially for his build because he's still a slender guy. It just got a little pouch down there. But he's running hard and physical. Not like trucking nobody, but he was not running away from the contact. And that was beneficial to spell Najee Harris. Justin Fields still has some developing to do. Too many dangerous targets in the red area, dangerous throws, prolonging plays longer than he should, as I mentioned on that fumble. Instead of just pulling the ball down, being decisive, say I'm going to run or I'm going to get out of harm's way in the pocket and I'm just going to throw it out of bounds when I don't see anything else. It still kind of has that college mindset where it's like I can be Superman, I can make a play. These defenders aren't going to be able to catch up to the ball or whatever, and he ends up paying for it. So I think Arthur Smith can help him with that. I hope Arthur Smith can help him with that, help him to lean more on his run game. But much like I mentioned with Chicago, much like I've mentioned with other teams, Dallas, the run game has not been as helpful for the quarterbacks in Pittsburgh since Le'Veon to lean on as they develop and as they grow, as they mature and try to get more comfortable. Najee has just not been that guy. And I was a big Najee fan coming out of college, his story, his style, but he turned into Zeke faster than Zeke. And that's rough to watch. When you struggling to get 3 yards a carry. And you look slow. It's just rough. But nevertheless, the formula, moderate to below average run game, mobile quarterback who's growing in confidence, somewhat accurate, takes the deep shots down the field, and a good defense, it's starting to steal us into 3-1. They should have won that game, but they just started too slow. And he did take some shots to George Pickens that George Pickens dropped too. So it's not all on Fields. His receivers got to help him out as well. A lot of drops, some contested catches, but still for his skill set and what he's saying that he is as far as top 10 or the best in the league or all this or that, Fields needs help on that part of the game as well. So that's going to be it for today. I'm going to call it a wrap. I'm actually going to grab this jump drive right now so I can make sure this gets saved, the audio. And I'm going to get out of here. Definitely had some other games to cover. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I know it's 3 that I didn't take notes on, 9, 10, 11. So 11 games that I didn't cover. I got 5 on it. 5 out of the 16. Hopefully you found those 5 entertaining. But like I said, you're along with me for the journey. You're with me as I'm getting started. So I appreciate that. I appreciate if you've watched this episode in its entirety and witnessed this journey in this stage. It's greatly appreciated. So I implore you, I beg you, like this video, comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with whoever you think would enjoy the content or whoever you think would benefit from the information in the content. And again, I'm taking reps. I'm taking shots. I'm trying to put in my 10,000 hours so I can have content in the football YouTube content space like the performances you see from Matthew Stafford when he's playing quarterback. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, any of that, feel free to hit my email, 2deepcoverage@gmail.com, the number 2deepcoverage@gmail.com, or leave it in the comments And I look forward to trying to touch on week 5 next week, get a little more efficient, a little better, a little stronger, Antoine Fisher. And make this something that you add to your regular content consumption calendar. All right? Love y'all. I'll let y'all later. Peace.